Can you imagine? The entrance exam for the absolute best, most elite high school in all of Boston was actually, what is 1 + 1? Just because I knocked out the school board director's son with one punch, I was forcibly expelled from my high school. Just when I thought my future was completely ruined, I woke up to find that the world had changed. The IQ of all humanity had been forcibly downgraded and degraded by 1,000 times, and I, an academic slacker, became the only god with normal human logic among the 8 billion people on Earth. Merely for stopping the school board director's son from bullying someone, I was forcibly expelled from Oak Ridge High School. My dad asked every school in the city, but due to the interference of the director's son, not a single school was willing to take me in. The only one left was the absolute top, most insanely rigorous school in the city, St. Jude High School, and their highly mysterious pioneer elite class. Moreover, I didn't qualify for the unified exam and could only try to get in through external recruitment interviews. Old man, what's on the interview? Are there any past exam papers? No past papers, no syllabus, not even a question bank. You'll just have to try your luck. My dad guiltily stuffed a mouthful of pasta into his mouth. My vision went dark. This was the pioneer class where all the city's academic gods gathered. Taking my ordinary class grades to this interview, wasn't I just going there to be a clown? Late at night, I sat at my desk, flipping through AP Calculus AB, trying to cram at the last minute. Sine functions, plane vectors, trigonometric identities. It made my head spin. How on earth were they going to test this? Dazedly, I fell onto my bed and went to sleep. A bizarre electric static sound seemed to flash through my mind. BZZ, 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 easy, mode. Early the next morning, I rode my broken bicycle to my usual corner food truck. Boss, the usual, 2 bacon bagels and a black coffee. That's $5.50, right? I pulled out my loose change. The boss paused with the paper bag in his hand. Young man, you remembered wrong, didn't you? It's $5 total. Black coffee is $1. Our store's prices have always been round numbers, otherwise we can't figure out the math. Can't figure out the math? What kind of ridiculous reason is that? I glanced at the yellowing price list on the food truck. Everything was in round numbers of $2 or $1, without a single decimal point. Something wasn't right. It was definitely $1.50 the day before yesterday. With no time to overthink it, I rushed frantically to the waiting room at St. Jude High School. As soon as I walked in, I drew in a sharp breath. The dozen or so people sitting there all looked like terrifyingly standard professional test takers. The guys had the standard buzz cuts, thick black rimmed glasses, and dull, wooden eyes. The girls had high ponytails and chipped stainless steel thermoses, looking rather dim-witted. This aura was terrifying. I'm doomed. What's the point of even taking the test? I suppressed the urge to turn around and run, and peeked at the study guide of the guy sitting next to me. Answer memorization manual for multiplication and division within 50? What the hell? Why does the title sound like a book of bad jokes? As expected of a top-tier genius, reading jokes to relax before an exam. Looking at the other side, a girl with short hair was frantically scratching her head, muttering nervously, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? To a summer's day, gentle and lovely, but what was it again?" I was completely baffled. Were these geniuses under so much pressure that they had all gone mad? What the hell were they memorizing? The interview process was incredibly fast. In less than 2 hours, the room was mostly empty. The geniuses who came out were in an extremely tragic state, all of them crying and sobbing, their mental fortitude completely shattered, as if they had suffered the ultimate humiliation. I swallowed hard and bit the bullet, walking into the examination room. The chief examiner, Mr. Mitchell, took off his glasses and rubbed his temples, his face full of impatience. From Oak Ridge Public High School, regular class? He shook his head, too lazy to even cast a glance at me. Begin. Don't delay everyone from going to the cafeteria to eat. The questions are on the electronic blackboard. You have 5 minutes and an 80% accuracy rate is required. I turned to look at the screen. The next second, as if struck by lightning, I froze in place. Densely packed on the screen were more than 20 calculation problems. 11, 1,527, 2,416, 84? These f***ing questions are for the elite pioneer class interview. Aren't these all 2nd-grade elementary school mental math problems? I was dumbfounded, turning my head to ask tentatively, "Teacher, these questions, this is it?" "Yes." Mitchell snorted coldly, and several teachers next to him had already started packing their briefcases, getting ready to go grab some pizza. Is someone pranking me? Hidden cameras? A reality TV prank show? Has the world gone mad? Whatever. Even if it's acting, I'm gonna finish showing off. I took a deep breath, my fingers swiping frantically across the electronic screen. I didn't even need to use my brain. It was pure instinct and muscle memory. 1 question, 2 questions, 3 questions. At an afterimage speed of 1 question every 2 seconds, in less than a minute, I filled out all 20 questions completely. The teachers below who were preparing to leave instantly froze in their tracks, their eyes almost popping out of their sockets. The answers are all correct. The math teacher responsible for checking the answers was trembling. Mitchell's but had just lifted halfway off his chair, but he slammed heavily back down, the look in his eyes changing instantly. Interesting. Basic math passed. Continue. The screen refreshed with a dozen general knowledge questions. What is the next line after Shakespeare's classic quote, "To be or not to be" in Hamlet? What is a word called that reads reads the same forwards and backwards. What is the full name of the first president of the United States? This was practically rubbing my IQ in the dirt. With flowing ease, I wrote all the answers on the screen without a single spelling mistake. The examiner's table was dead silent. The teacher stared intensely at the young teacher who set the questions, highly suspecting he had leaked the question bank from his USB drive. How is a 100 accuracy rate possible? I've taught for 30 years and wouldn't dare say I could do that. Mitchell slammed the table and stood up. He pushed his chair aside, rushed up to the podium himself, and heavily wrote down a severely out-of-syllabus ultimate question that he believed was a sure kill. 3 by 517 solve for X. The teachers below all frowned. Mr. Mitchell, isn't this question too out of syllabus for a high school student? The difficulty is way too high. I looked at this quadratic equation, my heart completely undisturbed, even wanting to laugh a little. My worldview had already shattered into pieces. I was completely numb now. I didn't even use scratch paper. Pausing for less than a second, I picked up the pen and wrote directly to. The entire room was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. Mitchell froze completely in place, his breathing as heavy as a bull's. He had found this question in a university advanced mathematics book as an example problem last night, specially modifying the values to use as homework. It was absolutely impossible for anyone to have seen it. Solved in a few seconds? Only the legendary geniuses could do that, right? Write down the calculation process. Mitchell's voice trembled, his legs going soft. Feeling helpless, I turned around and scribbled 3 by 12, x4, x2. Mitchell stared unblinkingly at those few lines of text, his heart pounding wildly as if struck by a heavy hammer. With trembling hands, he pulled out my resume, took out his official stamp, and slammed it down hard. Student Silas, congratulations on passing the interview. Welcome to the St. Jude Pioneer class. Riding my bike home with the admission letter in hand, I looked at the scenes on the street, and a chill rushed from the soles of my feet straight to the top of my skull. The signboards of the shops on the street made absolutely no distinction between uppercase and lowercase letters. There were 0 private cars on the streets. They were all uniformly marked yellow taxis. I even saw a golden retriever with dollar bills in its mouth, waiting in line to buy a hot dog for its owner. This wasn't a prank. The world really had changed. Returning home, I turned on my computer and spent the entire afternoon researching, finally figuring out the truth. The IQ of humanity in this world had been comprehensively downgraded. People's thinking was extremely limited, and some people's intelligence was even lower than that of advanced mammals. In other words, this was an out-and-out world of morons, and the ones driving history and technological development were an extremely small minority of anomalies known as geniuses. Right now, among the 8 billion people, there wasn't a single genius. The last universally recognized genius appeared 1,300 years ago. That meant, with the intelligence of a normal high school student, my existence in this world was a higher dimensional strike. I was the absolute ceiling of human IQ, a guaranteed, invincible, overpowered main character script. Meanwhile, in the St. Jude High School office, Mitchell was staring blankly at his Harvard graduation photo. Back then, he was hailed as a math genius, stepping proudly into Harvard's forbidden library. Yet he found that he couldn't even understand the first page of those works revered as the absolute truth of geniuses. His faith collapsed, his mental fortitude shattered, and he fled back to Boston in disgrace to teach. He gripped his phone tightly, having just finished inquiring about my background from the principal of Oak Ridge High School, his eyes full of disbelief. With such high IQ, solving a top-secret equation, how could he leave no trace of his past brilliance at all? He took out a cigarette, but accidentally put his Zippo lighter directly into his mouth. He had been so frightened by me that he had completely lost his composure. That evening, my old man came home. Why isn't the door opening? I'm back. My old man banged loudly on the door. He clearly brought his keys, but actually left them at the construction site. I opened the door and slapped the admission letter right onto his face. My old man's eyes almost popped out. He immediately called his foreman to cancel his resignation and eagerly took on a business trip assignment. While we were both celebrating, the TV suddenly broadcasted a breaking news report. A vicious serial murder case has occurred in Chicago. 5 young women have been murdered. The modus operandi is unknown. Citizens are advised to step up precautions. In this degraded world, how could there be such a highly intelligent serial killer? Neither of us paid it any mind at the time, treating it as just ordinary social news, completely unaware of the terror hidden behind it. Early the next morning, I arrived punctually at Mitchell's office to report in. There's a placement test before you enroll. Mitchell locked the door behind me and pulled out a test paper. I glanced at it. It was about the difficulty level of a 6th grader. The corners of my mouth curled up, and I scribbled it all out in less than 10 minutes and handed it back. As Mitchell took the paper and turned around, his hands trembled uncontrollably, and even his breathing was desperately suppressed. He steadied his nerves and led me toward the top floor. The entire academic building echoed with the sound of reading, except for the Pioneer classroom on the top floor, which was dead silent. Pushing the door open, the 20-plus students in the class were neatly slumped over their desks, snoring soundly. Stop sleeping. We have a newcomer today. Old Mitchell knocked frantically on the blackboard. I was assigned to the last row. The guy at the desk in front of me was a blonde guy named Chris, who leaned leaned over to try and get close to me. Bro, which deity are you? He actually didn't make you take the impromptu suppression test? Chris pointed at the people in the class, showing off wildly. See that guy with the black-rimmed glasses? He can do mental addition and subtraction up to 1,000. That girl, she can recite hundreds of sonnets. And Chloe by the window, she's the boss in the field of general knowledge. I wanted to laugh after hearing this. Morons who are slightly smarter are still morons. This pioneer class heavily emphasized freedom. No one cared what you studied, it all depended on self-discipline. The famous quotes on the wall were even more ridiculously absurd. Genius is just genius, it has nothing to do with hard work or inspiration. Thomas Edison AD 1807429 What the hell? Edison lived for tens of thousands of years. I walked to the bookshelf at the back row and pulled out a copy of A Brief History of 5 Million Years of Western Civilization. Flipping it open, ancient Egyptian civilization was founded over 1,900,000 years BC. The process of history hadn't changed, but the timeline had been stretched out 1,000 times. Countless average Joes grinding for millions of years just to grind out this tiny bit of civilization. During the break, everyone ran out to stroll around. Just as I was about to stand up, there was a sudden smack. An object fell from the desk of Chloe, the beautiful school idol sitting by the window. A standard 3x3 Rubik's Cube. I casually picked it up. This Rubik's Cube was made of old materials with only one face completed, and even the first layer wasn't aligned. People in this world still play with this. My hands itched. Having practiced speed cubing in middle school, my muscle memory instantly activated. Left up, right down, right inverse, left. My fingertips spun rapidly, the colored blocks falling into place like flowing water. Right at that moment, Chloe ran back into the classroom from outside. Smack! The water bottle in her hand dropped straight to the floor, spilling water everywhere. She stared unblinkingly at the half-completed Rubik's Cube in my hands, her eyes almost bulging out, sweat beads rolling down her flushed neck. Sorry, it dropped on the floor. I felt a bit awkward. You can restore it? Her voice trembled as if she had witnessed a miracle. Of course. In less than 30 seconds, a perfectly solved six-sided Rubik's Cube was placed on the desk. I handed it over. Chloe didn't even look at the Rubik's Cube. She strode right up to me, grabbed my wrist tightly, breathing heavily like a broken bellows, a kind of manic light flickering in her eyes. Holy shit, isn't this woman's reaction a bit too exaggerated? Am I in trouble? Classmate. I tentatively tried to pull my hand back. Chloe let go as if electrocuted, appearing extremely flustered, and stutteringly asked for my name. Silas. She muttered the name softly, her eyes filled with undisguised expectation. Soon, the blonde bro Chris kicked the classroom door open, bringing explosive news. Guys, the general knowledge boss of our class, Patrick, got poached by Oak Ridge High School. The whole class exploded. Next week was the state academic decathlon, and Oak Ridge, in order to secure Ivy League guaranteed admissions, actually poached Patrick to take Zachary, their school board's useless son, to the competition. Enemies are bound to cross paths. Sitting in the back row, I suddenly spoke up. It seems the other school poaching him at this time just wants Patrick to act as a hired gun. Just this one sentence of normal human logical deduction plunged the entire class into dead silence and deep thought. In this world where everyone's IQ was degraded, this was already considered an extremely profound strategic insight. Not long after, Mitchell called me into his office. Silas, Patrick is gone. I want you to fill his spot. Mitchell stared at me. You don't need to answer the questions. Just observe, learn, and feel the atmosphere. I sneered inwardly. Feel the atmosphere? If you let me make a move, I'd rub Zachary and his gang into the dirt until they doubted their very existence. Do you have a university you want to go to? Mitchell asked again. Columbia University, I guess. It's close to home. Mitchell flatly shook his head in refusal. No, your talent cannot be buried. If you place in this competition, I will directly find you a top-tier mentor at Harvard University and guarantee your admission to Cambridge. Guaranteed admission to Harvard? That sounds great. I returned to the classroom, and Chris leaned in with a gossipy face. What did old Mitchell want with you? He wants me to take Patrick's place in the competition. Chris was stunned. Old Mitchell cares about his face the most. He never lets anyone he's not confident in take the field. Why would he let a newcomer like you go? But it's fine. With me and Chloe carrying you, it's absolutely guaranteed. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned to look at Chloe, his eyes widening as if he'd seen a ghost. Chloe, why did you give up your reserved seat by the window and move next to Silas? Chloe's face turned bright red, and she squeezed out a sentence. By the window, the wind blows cold. Chris scratched his head, his face full of question marks. Cold? It's f***ing 85 degrees Fahrenheit today. I looked at Chris' dumbfounded face, too lazy to entertain his stupid question. After school, I rode my bike home. Just as I turned a few corners, I felt a gaze on my back. Turning around, I indeed saw Chloe riding a shared bicycle, trailing far behind me. What does this girl want? I simply squeezed the brakes, slowed down, and rode parallel to her. You take this route too? Want to come to my house and hang out? No need. Chloe, like a frightened rabbit, stutteringly turned her bike around, pedaled furiously, and ran away. I smiled speechlessly and turned into the alley ahead to head home. But I had no idea that just a few minutes after Chloe turned onto that unfamiliar street, a white Ford sedan silently tailed her. Miss, need a ride? A middle-aged man with an honest-looking face rolled down the window. Chloe's intuition told her something was wrong, and she accelerated desperately. But how could a bicycle outrun outrun a car. The man pulled open the car door, lunged forward to tightly grab her hair, and violently yanked her to the ground. A pungent towel soaked in chloroform was forcefully clamped over her nose and mouth. Chloe's struggles grew weaker and weaker until she finally went limp and collapsed. That night, I was home alone checking historical documents of this world, feeling more and more like things were utterly absurd. I posted a thread on the Reddit forum, "Brothers, do you know what geniuses usually eat to boost their brains?" As a result, all the moronic netizens below mocked me. Does trash like you even deserve to ask about geniuses? If you're so capable, go ask the core. The core? I immediately searched for the term. It turned out that 10,000 years ago, when human civilization was stagnating, 28 ancient geniuses across various fields were born simultaneously. Together, they created the world's only super artificial intelligence, the core. It holds all the information of humanity, but it is locked tight by advanced firewalls, and only true geniuses have the right to access it. Interesting. I shut down the computer and fell into a deep sleep. Early the next morning, an ear-piercing phone ring smashed me awake. Is this Silas? This is the Boston Police Department BPD. Your classmate Chloe has been drawn into the Chicago serial murder case. Please come immediately to assist with the investigation. My brain buzzed, and I instantly sobered up. Sitting in the waiting chair at the police station, I flipped through the case briefing. The killer, Thomas, was a carpenter. 2 months ago, he skinned his own wife and daughter to make an American-style single sofa. Now he exclusively targets young high school girls, sending a 3-day countdown text message every time he kidnaps someone. Chloe was his 6th target. Beside me, Chloe's grandmother was crying so hard she could barely stand. She gripped the sleeve of my jacket tightly, mistaking me for a detective, begging me to save her granddaughter. Seeing the desperate look in the old woman's eyes, the fire in my heart instantly flared up. If this were my original world, this case would have been cracked long ago. But in this degraded world, the police relied entirely on an FBI inspector's guide left behind by a genius 14,000 years ago. Facing this kind of high IQ serial killer with anti-reconnaissance skills, the entire Boston police force was being played like fools. Counting on these downgraded police officers, Chloe was definitely going to die. I am the only person in this world with normal logic. The variable to break this deadlock can only be me. I abruptly stood up, barged straight into the command center, and locked eyes with Detective Sarah, who was leading the team. Detective Sarah, I am Silas from the St. Jude High School Pioneer class, majoring in criminal investigation. Give me the detailed files of the case. In Boston, the words Pioneer class were a VIP pass to the IQ ceiling. Without a word of nonsense, Sarah directly handed me a stack of top-secret documents and a trash can. The photos were extremely gory, forcing down my nausea. I quickly extracted the key information. How are you sure there are no copycats? I asked. Sarah clicked on a video. In the footage, a white Ford stopped at the entrance of an alley. A middle-aged man stepped out of the car, held up a piece of paper with bloody writing to the surveillance camera. I will present a gift to the gods. Afterward, the white car drove into the alley. This was his provocation yesterday. Sarah gritted her teeth. But the weirdest thing is, the cameras at both ends of the alley were completely blocked off. After this white car drove in, it evaporated like it vanished from the face of the earth, never coming out again. I frowned and blurted out, "Are there any blind spots in the alley? Were there any large trucks that could have hidden the car inside a shipping container to transport it out?" Sarah froze abruptly, looking at me like I was a monster. She pulled out the FBI inspector's guide that they worshipped as a holy relic and flipped through it frantically. Your hypothesis isn't even recorded in the guide. No shit. Are the brains of these people rusted? Too lazy to talk nonsense, I strode right into the task force conference room, slammed the table and gave an order. Pull up the surveillance footage from the day of the incident and play it at 16x speed. The young officers scrambled to type on their keyboards. An hour later, a red sedan drove out in the footage. Stop. Where did this red car come from? I pointed at the screen. That's a car belonging to a resident of the alley. It has nothing to do with the killer, a police officer answered blankly. I laughed out of sheer anger, pointing out the details on the screen and hammering them out word by word. Nothing to do with him? Are you all blind? Look at the edges of the windows and the tires. They are covered in red spray paint that wasn't cleaned off properly. The make and model are exactly the same as the white car. The killer was in a blind spot in the alley, sprayed the white car directly with red paint, swapped it with fake license plates, and drove it right out. Dead silence. Every police officer in the conference room was utterly dumbfounded. This kind of most basic sleight of hand was an absolute dimensional strike miracle in their eyes. Sarah took a deep breath and decisively ordered, "Listen entirely to Silas. Look up this red car immediately." In less than 10 minutes, the results came out. The real owner of the red car was out of town on a business trip, and the car had been locked in the garage the whole time. I leaned back in my chair, my brain working at lightning speed. Check the cameras, filter the red car's routes out of the city, focus the search on abandoned villages and industrial zones. Get me 2 drones with infrared aerial photography, a SWAT team, and mobilize your 2 best snipers. We move out at nightfall. Evening arrived. The operation began. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, the venue for the state academic decathlon was already packed with people. The blonde bro Chris went to the event solo, walking into the waiting area alone wearing wearing a St. Jude High School baseball jacket. In Oak Ridge High School's team, Zachary, the school board director's son whom I had beaten into dropping out, was swaggering over, leading Patrick, the poached general knowledge boss. Yo, why is Chris the only one left from St. Jude High School? Where's that girl named Chloe? I heard she's about to be chopped into pieces. Zachary smiled, his face full of fat. Chris didn't say a word, violently winding up his arm. Bang! A heavy punch landed squarely on Zachary's face. Zachary let out a miserable scream, flew straight backward, crashed heavily onto the floor, his nose bleeding profusely. FK, you dare hit me? Do you know who I am? Zachary roared madly, clutching his face. Chris stepped on his chest, pulled out his phone, clicked on a video, and shoved it in his face. His voice was as cold as ice. Zachary, your dad accepted $153 million in political contributions. You crippled a substitute teacher at 13 and bullied 2 classmates to suicide at 15. I can send your whole family to federal prison at any time for this rotten record. Zachary stared at the screen, his pupils quaking violently. His school board background, which he was so proud of, was stripped bare to the point of leaving him naked in front of this pioneer class student where IQ equaled social class. Control your dog mouth. Chris looked down at him condescendingly. Bottom feeders should have the awareness of bottom feeders. Throwing down that sentence, Chris turned and walked towards the arena. Zachary lay on the ground, shivering all over, experiencing absolute class-based terror for the first time in his life. At that moment, in the abandoned industrial zone outside the city of Boston, I sat in the SWAT command vehicle, staring intently at the footage transmitted from the drone. The sun had completely set, and darkness swallowed the entire factory area. Just then, an extremely faint yellow light lit up in a broken window on the 5th floor. Gotcha. I gripped the walkie-talkie tightly. Snipers in position. Assault team move up. I grabbed binoculars, lying prone on a high vantage point opposite, staring fixedly at that window. Inside the room, the killer Thomas was caressing a newly made oak backing chair with a face full of obsession. Baby, look at this chair. Pure handcrafted mortise and tenon joints. Not a single nail used. I deliberately changed the dimensions to ensure the skin on your body will wrap around it perfectly. Chloe, who was tightly tied to another chair, hadn't eaten or drank water for 2 days. With a dirty rag stuffed in her mouth, her eyes were filled with the dead energy of utter despair. It's about time. I have to make a cut on your arm first to test the elasticity of your skin. Thomas smiled honestly, pulling out a sharp wood-carving knife from his pocket, walking towards Chloe step by step. Chloe twisted her body in terror, tears streaming down her face. Sniper, take the shot. I growled into the walkie-talkie. No good. The angles overlap. The sniper's anxious voice came through the comms channel. He's directly in front of the hostage. If the bullet goes through, it will absolutely hit the girl. I can't shoot. FK. Thomas had already rolled up Chloe's sleeve, the blade pressed tightly against her fair forearm. A forced entry would absolutely be too late. The moment the assault team breached the door, he could slit Chloe's throat in one slash. I had to lure him away from Chloe without arousing his suspicion. My brain exploded in an instant. In a flash of lightning, I remembered an audio evidence file I had flipped through today. It was a phone recording left behind by Thomas' murdered wife and daughter. Assault team, check the work group chat. I roared into the microphone. I just sent an audio file. Play it on speakerphone from your phones immediately. Push the volume to maximum within 10 seconds. In the dead silence of the factory area, a bizarre singing voice was suddenly swept up by the night wind. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. It was the voices of a woman and a child. In the room, the knife in Thomas' hand stopped abruptly. His whole body stiffened, cold sweat instantly soaking his back. The singing grew louder, as if lingering right outside the window. 3, 2, 1. Happy birthday, Daddy. Surprise. I bought this carving knife with the allowance I saved up. A young girl's crisp voice echoed in the abandoned factory area. Mary, honey, is that you? Thomas' eyes widened round. Looking as if he had lost his mind, the knife in his hand dropped to the floor with a clang. I didn't kill you. It was the gods who wanted your lives. I love you guys. His psychological defenses collapsed instantly. His knees gave way and he knelt on the floor, wailing and crawling step by step towards the window. He had completely moved away from Chloe's position, his whole body defenselessly exposed to the crosshairs of the window. Now, sniper! I roared madly, my eyes nearly splitting open. Bang! A muffled gunshot ripped through the night. A 7.62mm NATO standard sniper bullet, carrying devastating kinetic energy, shattered the glass in an instant. The high-speed rotating copper core bullet instantly pierced through Thomas' chest. A mist of blood exploded. Thomas slumped to the ground like a torn sack, large mouthfuls of bloody foam bubbling from his mouth. Until his death, he couldn't figure out why the gods he worshipped failed to help him block this 7.62mm bullet. Done. I pushed the binoculars aside. Assault team, move in. Medics, follow up. Sniper, keep watch. If he dares to twitch, finish him. After giving the orders, I led people charging downstairs. Kicking the door open, 4 or 5 SWAT officers raised their guns to control the scene. Thomas on the floor was dead as a doornail. Chloe was tied to the chair. Prolonged dehydration and terror had left her eyes unfocused. An officer untied her ropes and pulled the towel out of her mouth. She weakly lifted her head. head. The moment she saw me, her bloodshot eyes instantly broke down. Wah! She threw herself into my arms, sobbing loudly. Tears and snot were rubbed all over my chest. Having never experienced a situation like this, I didn't know where to put my hands and could only stiffly pat her back. It's okay. It's all over. The medical team rushed in, carrying the unconscious Chloe onto a stretcher. Detective Sarah, who led the team, walked over and patted my shoulder. Silas, I owe you a favor for this. If you need anything in the future, just let me know. They'll send a car to take you back to rest. I didn't stand on ceremony with her. Having been highly tense for 2 days straight, now that I relaxed, sleepiness rushed straight to my head. Getting into the police car, the wind from the suburbs made me drowsy. The driver casually turned on the radio. Currently, the scores between Oak Ridge High School and St. Jude High School are very tight, but Street Jude's Chris is clearly getting a bit anxious. To save time, he completely skipped verifying the previous calculation question and just lost a point. Hearing this, I sobered up instantly. That son of a bitch Chris. He bragged all day, and this is what he amounted to? I rolled down the window, the cold wind slapping my face. Officer, please change the route. There's a venue where I need to turn the tide. At this moment, at the competition venue, Chris was staring at the 28th question on the screen. His brows knitted into a dead knot. Continuous, rapid mental math problems. Oak Ridge's team had 3 people and Patrick, the leader, was a sneaky bastard. They divided the labor clearly. Patrick did the heavy lifting, and the other 2 assisted. Chris was fighting alone, and his speed simply couldn't keep up. The time difference he had desperately tried to snatch was completely wiped out. Question 28 popped up. Given 4 by 521, 2y 1016. What is x multiplied by y? Chris glanced at the remaining time, knowing full well this round was doomed. He gritted his teeth, intending to gamble on his luck, his finger hovering in midair, preparing to press option D. Right at the moment his fingertip was about to touch the button, a hand suddenly grabbed his wrist tightly from the side. Immediately after, another hand reached out from behind him, cleanly and decisively slapping down on option B. Ding. System prompt. Correct answer. I stood behind him, panting heavily, and grinned. Hee, you suck too, bro. Take a rest, leave the rest to me. Chris whipped his head around, his eyes almost bulging out. Silas, why are you here? What about Chloe? It's settled. The person has been rescued. I grabbed the mineral water on the table and chugged half the bottle. How's the score? We're screwed. Chris spread his hands. 3 points behind. Time difference is almost 10 minutes. It's a dead end. I raised an eyebrow. A dead end? Watch how I bring the score back. Chris rolled his eyes. Keep bragging. At the same time, in Oak Ridge High School's booth, Patrick heard the correct answer prompt and looked up in shock. Zachary beside him saw the face on the screen clearly, his features twisting. Silas, how could it be him? Last week, he was still the bottom-feeding trash of the grade. He definitely got into the Pioneer class through the back door. Patrick sneered coldly. Through the back door. Do you think Street Jude's Pioneer class is a farmer's market? But he didn't take it to heart. The St. Jude team only had 8 minutes left and was down by 3 points. Even if the Silas was possessed by Einstein, he couldn't turn the tables. Unfortunately, he underestimated my strength. More precisely, he underestimated my dimensional strike capability in this world where intelligence had regressed 1,000-fold. Ding. The next question popped up. A right-angled triangle has 2 legs measuring 6 and 3. Find the square of the hypotenuse. The hint even thoughtfully attached the Pythagorean theorem formula. I glanced at the screen, my heart entirely undisturbed, and directly pressed C. Ding. Correct answer. Time taken, less than 5 seconds. The whole arena was dead silent, followed by an eruption of gasps. The commentator didn't even have time to read the 200-word script he had prepared, stuttering to smooth things over. It seems student Silas has explosive luck. The accuracy rate of his blind guesses is extremely high. Everyone thought I was guessing, including Chris beside me. Holy shit, are you spending your lifespan to play this game? Chris jabbed my arm frantically. I leaned back in the chair with my eyes closed. Don't be noisy. Wake me up when the next question pops out. Question 30. Todd bought a toy for 8, sold it for 9, bought it back for 10, and sold it for 11. How much profit did he make? As soon as the question popped out, my eyes weren't even fully open before I casually pressed B. Ding. Correct answer. The arena boiled over. 3 high-difficulty logic problems in a row, all instant kills and perfectly correct. The audience seats practically exploded. In Oak Ridge's answering room, the atmosphere dropped to freezing point. Patrick stared dead at the screen, cold sweat breaking out on his forehead. This is impossible. This kind of luck does not conform to the principles of probability. Refusing to believe it, he forced himself to steady his mind and solve this buying and selling logic problem. After calculating for a while, he pressed the wrong answer, and Oak Ridge's answering time instantly reset to 0. Their final score froze at 27 points. It was my turn to perform. Question 31. Fill in the blank. Snail A crawls 1 meter per hour. Snail B crawls 0.5 meters per hour. B crawls for 3 hours first. In how many minutes will it catch up? Isn't this an elementary school pursuit problem? I took the keyboard and typed out the answer. Ding. Correct answer. Another instant kill. This time, even the excuse of guessing correctly couldn't be used. This was a fill-in-the-blank question. Cheating. This is absolutely cheating. Zachary from Oak Ridge smashed the table like a mad dog. Patrick, his face livid, led his teammates rushing straight out of the answering room, heading directly backstage to report me to the program staff. The competition was forced to pause. The audience discussed fervently, everyone guessing whether I had memorized the question bank in advance. Chris looked at me with a complicated expression. Silas, they're reporting you for cheating. What are you going to do? I didn't even lift my eyelids. Let them investigate. Why should I be scared of something I didn't do? Before long, Patrick pushed open the door to our answering room. He walked straight up to me, staring at me intently. I want to personally select questions for you from the question bank. In exchange, I'll give you this. He took out a USB flash drive and tossed it to me. Inside is the evidence of money laundering and bribery from Zachary's dad over the past decade. As long as you agree to let me pick the questions, I'll give you the password after the competition ends. I know you have bad blood with Zachary. I caught the flash drive and weighed it in my hand. I didn't care if it was real evidence or not. Ruining Zachary only took one sentence anyway, but I was quite curious to see what kind of garbage questions this so-called genius could pick for me. Deal. I leaned back in my chair. 10 minutes later, the competition restarted. The host announced that to ensure fairness, the remaining questions would be personally selected from the question bank by Oak Ridge High School's Patrick. The screen flashed, and Patrick's first question appeared. A system of linear equations in 3 variables made up of 3 strange graphic symbols, with no clear corresponding relationships. Chris glanced at it and immediately grew tense. That bastard Patrick is going for the kill. You can't calculate this in under 10 minutes. Is that so? I scanned the screen and swiftly typed 3 numbers on the keyboard. Ding! Correct answer. The gasps from the audience nearly blew the roof off. Immediately after, the second question popped up. A farm has chickens and pigs locked together. Counting the top, there are 35 heads. Counting the bottom, there are 94 feet. How many chickens and pigs are there respectively? The audience collectively gasped. In their eyes, this was an insanely difficult, heaven-defying problem that old professors would lecture on for half an hour in Ivy League number theory classes. I didn't even grab scratch paper. I did mental math for 2 seconds and typed out the answer. Ding. Correct answer. The score instantly froze. 27-27. Tied. Next, Patrick went completely mad. Obscure quotes from literary classics, mitochondrial operations in biology, the founding of dynasties in European history. He chose strictly obscure questions from various fields, attempting to drag me to death with breadth of knowledge. But every time I answered, it never exceeded 3 seconds. Slaughtering all the way until the end of question 39, the St. Jude team hadn't lost a single point. The score was reversed to 33 points, and there were still a full 3 minutes left on the clock. Patrick collapsed into a chair backstage, his hands trembling uncontrollably. He finally realized that what he was facing wasn't a high school student at all, but an insurmountable mountain. Carrying his final shred of unwillingness, he clicked on the ultimate test question in the question bank, one that had gathered dust for hundreds of years. A long paragraph of text popped up on the screen. This is the unsolved paradox left by the physicist Newton. A boy borrows 50 from his dad and 50 from his mom. He buys shoes for 97, leaving 3. He gives 1 back to his dad, 1 back to his mom, and keeps 1 for himself. At this time, he owes his parents 49 each. 49, 49, 98. Plus the 1 the boy kept equals 99. Question: where did the missing 1 go? As soon as the question appeared, the people in the audience who knew their stuff went completely crazy. Chris slapped his forehead. Holy shit, this is the puzzle of the century left by Newton. The original question remains unsolved to this day. How the hell do you calculate this? The university professors in the VIP section also shook their heads, concluding that absolutely no one could solve this ghostly, unpredictable logic problem within 3 minutes. Looking at the screen, I almost couldn't hold back my laughter. To hell with the puzzle of the century. Isn't this just the overused brain teaser that was all over social media when I was in middle school? Has this intellectually degraded human race actually treated this thing as an unsolved mystery? The question itself is a logic trap that secretly swaps concepts. The debt and the remaining money in hand simply cannot be directly added together. The 98 debt already includes the 1 the boy held in his hand. Too lazy to give a long-winded speech, I typed a single line into the answer box. This question contains a logical fallacy. Calculating the whereabouts of the 1 as stated in the prompt is mathematically meaningless. Answer: it does not exist. I hit enter. The director backstage looked at my answer, completely failing to understand it. But to quickly end this farce, he directly had the system graded as correct. The competition ended. The St. Jude team won the championship. Thunderous applause filled the arena. On the red carpet, Chris and I walked side by side toward the podium. Patrick walked briskly past me, dropping a sentence in a low voice. The password is 88. He didn't even dare to raise his head, leaving in a hurry. Just then, a greasy-looking guy wearing an expensive Seville robe bespoke suit approached, a fake smile he thought was charming plastered on his face. Hello, Silas. I'm Julian from the Wellington Private Academy. I'd like to get to know you. Just as I was about to speak, Chris grabbed me and pulled me behind him, blocking the guy's line of sight. Isn't this little Julian? Chris smiled without the smile reaching his eyes. Hello, Uncle Chris. Julian's expression stiffened for a moment. Silas just told me he has a terminal illness. His head hurts whenever he talks. You guys chat next time. Chris dragged me forward. I was completely baffled. I'm sick? How come I didn't know? Chris lowered lowered his voice, looking at Julian's back with utter disgust. Stay away from that guy. That son of a bitch is f***ing disgusting. Still confused, I was pulled directly onto the podium by Chris. The spotlight hit us, and the host shoved a microphone in my face, excitedly asking how I pulled off this shocking comeback and what my secret was. I didn't have a f***ing secret. I couldn't just say I transmigrated with a modern person's brain. I cleared my throat and spouted some nonsense. The secret is to read more books, read more newspapers, eat fewer burgers, and sleep more. The despairing part was that a large swath of Ivy League pre-med students below actually pulled out notebooks and buried their heads to take frantic notes. This world is truly hopeless. Leaving the venue, a pretty girl named Lauren ran over, blushing, to thank me. She added my social media account and said she wanted to treat me to a meal. I didn't stand on ceremony and accepted right away. Returning home that night, having run nonstop for 2 days, I fell asleep the moment my head hit the pillow. What I didn't know was that across the ocean, Oxford University in the UK was completely losing its mind at this moment. Just because I wrote this question contains a logical fallacy on that final Newton paradox, Professor Rhodes, a top math professor, experienced an instant epiphany. Countless proofs addressing my sentence rapidly unfolded, even alarming high-level officials in European and American countries. At noon the next day, Detective Sarah called me to the BPD. She handed me a thick stack of reward money and pushed the Killer Thomas diary in front of me at the same time. Flipping it open, it was absolutely absurd. Thomas was targeted by a conman calling himself a God's envoy. The conman casually recommended a few stocks that happened to go up by tens of thousands of dollars, and Thomas completely believed him, truly thinking he was the chosen of God. Later, the conman tricked him, saying the gods needed a sacrifice. Thomas' brain short-circuited, and he personally slaughtered his wife and daughter, draping their body parts over a throne he carved himself. When he ran back, covered in blood, to claim credit, the conman literally laughed out loud, pulled out his phone to record a video, and called him a brainless idiot. With this level of IQ, being played for a fool and still refusing to repent even in death. I shook my head after reading it, gave Detective Sarah a tip, and told her to check bank statements and surveillance cameras along the route. Before leaving, I casually slapped the flash drive Patrick gave me onto the table. It was full of ironclad evidence of money laundering by the Oak Ridge School Board director, Zachary's dad. Once this wave was verified, Zachary's family would be completely finished, ready to eat federal prison food. Coming out of the police station, I went to the hospital to see Chloe. Passing a fruit stand at the entrance, the boss weighed a few oranges and asked me for 18. I weighed them in my hand. The weight was clearly off. Going around to the side for a look, I saw a large, black magnet stuck under the scales tray. I chuckled. This shady merchant was trying to scam me. I casually grabbed 2 grapefruits. The boss calculated it, 39 total. I pulled out a $100 bill and handed it over. The boss gave me 61 in change. Holding the change, I pretended to slap my forehead. Oh, I have exact change. Let me give you 40 to round it out, and you give me back that 100 bill. The boss happily took the 40 I handed him, returned the 100 bill to me, and even yelled at the top of his lungs for me to come back next time. I turned around and immediately called the Department of Consumer Affairs and Weights and Measures, reporting his location and his rigged scale, making an easy 21 plus 2 bags of fruit. This kind of shady merchant should be locked up. Pushing open the door to the hospital room, Chloe was holding a book titled 36 Ways to Capture a Man's Heart, muttering to herself. Upon seeing me, her brain straight up crashed. Holding it in for a long time, she finally told me that she had designed an extremely absurd recruitment process for herself. First, show deep gratitude, then treat me to a meal, then take me through a life-or-death experience, and finally pick a dark and windy night to cry about her tragic past, making me her umbrella of protection. I rolled my eyes as I listened. Are the tropes in this world this stiff? I interrupted directly. Stop with the useless stuff. It'll point you to a clear path. Just tell me the secret directly. The more tragic, the better. Chloe actually listened. Her eyes turned red as she told me that her parents didn't die in an accidental car crash at all. They were silenced. Back then, her parents were investigative journalists. They discovered an African country whose average IQ far exceeded the global level. After on-site investigations, they found that decades ago, someone secretly created famines and plagues, slaughtering everyone in that country with low IQs. The only one capable of carrying out such a massive purge was that mysterious organization controlling the world's IQ data, the core. As a result, as soon as the news was reported, the newspaper was shut down, her parents got into a car accident, and the staff were burned alive. Chloe grabbed my wrist tightly, crying and begging me to help her uncover the truth. She said only someone with an IQ as high as mine could fight the core. Looking at her red eyes, my heart pounded wildly. No matter how I looked at it, this plotline felt like a suicide mission. As someone who just transmigrated over to enjoy the dimensional strike, on what basis should I mess with this world-class terrorist organization? I pried her hands off finger by finger. I refuse. I also have people I care about, and I don't want to get dragged into this. After speaking, I turned and left the hospital room, avoiding the sight of her broken expression. Just as I walked into the the first floor lobby, the scene before me left me stunned. A long queue had formed outside the cardiovascular department, with patients in hospital gowns lying haphazardly all over the floor. A crowd of people wailed to be seen by a doctor. A whiteboard hung outside the door, prescription data error, currently organizing. Suddenly, an old lady at the very front of the line clutched her chest and collapsed. Her young grandson threw himself at the door, kowtowing frantically, smashing his head until the floor was covered in blood, pleading hoarsely for the doctors to open the door and save her life. This scene made my chest tighten. I walked over, held the child down, and pulled out my Pioneer class student ID from my pocket, handing it to the hospital security guard. "I'm from the St. Jude Pioneer class, majoring in data analysis. Let me in to take a look." The moment the security guard saw the words Pioneer class, it was as if he saw a living bodhisattva, handing me the keys right on the spot. Pushing the door open, two attending physicians were as anxious as ants on a hot pan. They said that because a document malfunctioned, the patient's names and medications were all jumbled up. They couldn't prescribe medicine recklessly, or it would kill people. And the only IT data administrator capable of handling this had gone to New York for training. "What's the format of the document? Excel?" I asked. The two doctors looked blank. I moved closer to the computer and took a look. Right in the center of the screen was a massive Excel icon. Opening the document, I almost laughed out loud on the spot. Every row in the spreadsheet had a gradient color marker, but the colors in the name column were completely mixed up. I hovered the mouse over the filter icon in the header row and clicked on it. Besides the name column, which was sorted by AZ content, all the other columns were f***ing sorted by color. Which clumsy idiot accidentally clicked the wrong sorting method? Just because of this moronic operation, hundreds of people outside were lining up waiting to die. That old lady nearly breathed her last, and that child smashed his head open. Without a word, I smiled, clicked the filter on the name column, and changed the sorting to by color. Swish! Instantly, the colors across the entire document aligned perfectly, and the data returned to normal. The two doctors verified a few files and trembled with excitement, tightly grabbing my hand, wanting to give me a bonus and guarantee me admission to medical school. I pulled my hand out, looked at the gratitude in the eyes of the child who had rushed through the door, and sighed. Although the IQ of this world had degraded, these doctors' dedication to saving lives hadn't diminished in the slightest. I rubbed the child's head, turned, and walked away. That evening, Lauren treated me to dinner, choosing Lucille, a top-tier high-end French restaurant. We were chatting happily when a sarcastic, passive-aggressive voice suddenly came from behind. "Yo, isn't this that motherless bastard?" I stood up abruptly and threw a punch, but it was firmly blocked by a hand reaching out from the side. It was Henry. In my original world, this son of a bitch was just Zachary's lapdog. His family ran a rundown board game parlor. But in this degraded world, the status of Go Weicha game that severely tests the brain had been infinitely elevated. The Crown Strategy Academy his family ran had turned them into the privileged class. They even brought bodyguards when they went out. Henry adjusted his gold-rimmed glasses and sneered, "Silas, you're pretty good at fighting in school, but in society it's all about power. My family has shares in this restaurant. Today, I'm going to have my bodyguards cripple you." Several men in black suits cracked their knuckles and surrounded me. "Stop." Julian walked over from the side, pulled up a chair directly, and sat down. He looked at Henry like he was a clown. "Do you not watch the news? Silas just represented the St. Jude Pioneer class and won the state academic championship yesterday." Henry froze, quickly pulling out his phone to check. His face changed instantly. He was arrogant, but not stupid. The champion of the Pioneer class was someone he couldn't afford to provoke. But he couldn't swallow this anger. His eyes shifted, landing on Lauren next to me, and he gave his bodyguards a meaningful look. "Drag this woman outside. You're asking for death." I was just about to make a move. Julian spoke up again. "Henry, your brother is about to fall out of the professional ranks, right? His opponent in the next match is me. If you dare touch them today, he'll forfeit my next match and have your brother kicked out of the Go Circle." Henry's veins bulged with anger. Staring fiercely at Julian, he gritted his teeth. "Fine, you're ruthless." Seeing him turn to leave, I slammed the table. "Halt!" I looked at Henry, letting out a cold sneer. "Henry, you want to cripple me so badly? I'll give you a chance." The entire restaurant fell silent. "Since you're from the Strategy Academy, let's play a game of Go. If you win, you'll drop out of school, give up my guaranteed university placement and my championship title." Henry jerked his head around. "Are you sure?" "Of course. But if you lose, not only do you have to apologize to Lauren, you also have to kneel and kowtow twice to me. Dare to bet?" Lauren and Julian were anxious, frantically pulling at my clothes, telling me not to be impulsive. They both knew Henry's Go skills were already at the level of a professional one-dan. But Henry smiled. He simply didn't believe that a champion whose IQ points were invested in general knowledge would know how to play the extremely complex game of Go. "All right, I'll bet with you." The bodyguards swiftly cleared the table, setting up an expensive kaya with Go board and the black and white Go bowls. The coin toss Nijirai ended, and Henry took black, playing first. He picked up a black stone, a triumphant, sinister smile on his lips, and placed it heavily right in the center of the Go board. "Tengen." I frowned. "I am a grand champion, and you open with Tengen against me? This is naked humiliation and provocation." I shook my head, took out a white stone, and placed placed it on the 4th row, 16th column. Star point. The moment the stone fell, the surroundings fell dead silent. Julian's eyes widened, unable to even speak clearly. Henry was stunned for 2 seconds, then suddenly burst into a fit of wild laughter, rocking back and forth. Lauren was terrified, tugging at Julian's sleeve and asking if I had made a mistake. Julian's face was livid. This isn't a matter of making a mistake. I even suspect whether Silas knows how to play Go at all. I was murmuring in my heart, what's wrong with these people? Isn't opening with a star point a basic Go operation? Silas, have you gone mad? Or do you just want to surrender directly? Henry continued to laugh wildly while placing his second piece, right next to Tengen. I was completely baffled. What kind of wild strategy is this? First move Tengen, second move right next to Tengen? Ignoring him, I continued to occupy my corner. 4th row, 4th column, another star point, 2 stones placed, and I directly occupied 2 corners. If this were my original world, my opening would be absolutely rock solid. As a result, the look Henry gave me actually carried a trace of pity. Silas, begging for mercy this way is useless. I can't wait to see the expression on your face when you kneel. He picked up a 3rd black stone and placed it next to Tengen again. 3 black stones formed a horizontal line right in the middle of the board. I stared at those 3 connected black stones, my head buzzing as if I had been clubbed. In what f***ing world is Go played like this? I whipped my head around, staring intensely at Julian behind me, my voice trembling. The game we're playing right now, what exactly is it? Julian looked at me like I was an idiot. Nonsense, of course it's 5-in-a-row Gobang. I froze in place, looking at those 3 black stones connected in a line, the expression on my face more complex than the Mona Lisa. Son of a BT, you're using a top-tier Go board to play 5-in-a-row. A clap of thunder exploded in my mind. 5-in-a-row Gobang? After all this, the playing chess, ranking up, and professional players they were talking about, was all 5-in-a-row? This thing, which was just a casual game played during afternoon tea in my original world, had actually become a national treasure and a symbol of class status here. So my half-day battle of wits and courage with Henry had all been against thin air? I turned back to Henry, confirming once again, what we're playing right now is 5-in-a-row? What else would it be? Henry looked at me like an idiot. He hadn't even heard of the word Go Weichi. Fine, the rules of the world have changed. I accept that. Henry tapped the board, urging me to place my stone. I played white, placing a stone. 10th row, 8th column, blocking his live 3. Henry smiled contemptuously. That's right, struggle obediently. Let me enjoy this. He placed another stone, 1012, and opened 4. I continued to block. 1013. Beside us, Lauren nervously asked Julian how the situation was. Julian whispered that it was very unoptimistic. My disadvantage was too great and there was basically no hope. He also told Lauren to find a chance to run first, saying Henry wouldn't dare touch him, but would definitely make a move on us. Lauren shook her head, saying she believed in me and that I wouldn't lose. Hearing her words warmed my heart. Henry's attacks became increasingly fierce. 911 dropped, instantly constructing 3 live 2s. The situation seemed to be completely under his control. I didn't hesitate. 1111, continuing to block. Henry began to apply frequent pressure. Live 3s, jump 3s, and open 4s came one after another. I followed him, frantically blocking, appearing to be suffocated by his pressure. But Julian's expression went from initial worry to gradual confusion. Only I knew why. Every single one of Henry's moves was within my calculations. He thought he was attacking, but in reality, I was using his stones to help complete my layout. After more than 10 moves, Henry's pace slowed down. He noticed something was wrong. He clearly had such a massive advantage in the opening. As long as I missed one step, he would win. Yet I hadn't exposed a single flaw. Not even one. He finally stopped. I chuckled lightly, my fingertip tapping a spot on the board. What's wrong? Can't find a live 2? Play here. This is the only spot you have left that can form a live 3. Henry stared at the board, his face livid. His black stones were completely locked down by me, his opening advantage entirely gone. Through gritted teeth, he asked how I did it, since I was just a piece of trash a month ago. I didn't look at him, letting out a yawn. If you're scared, just admit defeat and clear out. Of course, if you want to walk out of here on your knees in front of everyone, I don't object either. Bullshit. Henry's eyes were bloodshot. You think you've already won? Whatever. I don't care. After completely sealing off all his routes, I mobilized the outer white stones to launch a counterattack. Live 2s, live 3s, pressing forward step by step. Henry's brows knitted tighter and tighter. Lauren sensed the reversal in the atmosphere, her face full of joy. The look Julian gave me grew a bit more complicated. Smack. The final stone landed with the crisp sound of metal and stone. Henry, you've lost. Henry froze for a second, then immediately retorted. I haven't lost. This is just a live 3. I can block it. Julian interrupted him with a deep voice. Look at the diagonal line of the stone you just placed. Henry's voice abruptly stopped, his whole body going stiff. That move of mine perfectly formed another live 3 on the diagonal line with 2 other stones. A double kill. And the most crucial, most hidden stone was exactly that star point I had seemingly placed randomly as my first move. Henry muttered, Could it be that, from the very beginning I smiled. I didn't think that far ahead. It's just that while blocking your attacks, I conveniently steered the situation in this direction. Playing the final move here is just more satisfying. Henry's jaw clenched until it clicked. Lauren let out a long sigh of relief, finally loosening the fists she had been clenching the whole time. I raised my eyes to look at Henry. Fulfill the bet. Do we need to help you clear the venue? Henry's face was gloomy. Suddenly, he pulled a cold sneer. Bet? What bet? He grabbed the napkin with the signed agreement from the table and, right in front of us, tore it to shreds, handing it to the bodyguard behind him. Burn it. My face darkened. You want to renege on the debt? Henry feigned a look of incomprehension. Renege? I don't know what you're talking about, Lauren said angrily. So many people in the restaurant saw it. Henry smiled brightly. Call them over to testify, then let's see who dares to offend the Sterling family. He walked triumphantly past me, lowering his voice, emphasizing every word. Silas, no rush. We have plenty of time. Looking at his back, Julian sighed softly. It can't be helped. The influence of the Crown Strategy Club, controlled by his family, is too massive. If he's dead set on denying it, no one can do anything. But you showed your strength today, and he probably won't dare mess with you again in the short term. This is already the best outcome. Lauren puffed her cheeks in anger. I lowered my head and thought for a moment, then suddenly looked up and asked Julian, is there any way to make the influence of a top-tier club completely collapse? Julian paused. There is, as long as someone successfully kicks the pavilion challenges their dojo. Kicks the pavilion? Yes. According to the rules of the World Five-in-a-Row Association, as long as someone can defeat all the top players in a club, proves the club has no right to remain open. This is also why only one strategy club can exist in Boston at a time. I understand. Julian's brows tightened. Wait, you're not really going to the Crown Club to challenge them, are you? Can't I? Don't be impulsive. If a challenge fails, you have to cover the club's expenses for 10 years, and you'll be banned from playing for life. The Crown Club has several 7-dan players alone, and even an 8-dan. I shook my head. There's no need to be afraid. Lauren looked at me seriously. Silas, are you confident? Don't worry, you'll win. Okay, I believe you. But this whole thing started because of me, so you have to let me go with you. No, don't even try to shake me off. If you don't agree, it'll just sneak after you. Night. Lying in bed, my head was a bit messy. This world hadn't changed on the surface, but thinking about it carefully, it was far more dangerous than my original world. Janitors beaten and scolded for no reason on the street. Blue-collar workers barred from entering restaurants. Underground blood-buying stations set up everywhere. Frequent missing persons cases on the news. Class division relied entirely on intelligence levels and capital accumulation, as rotten as a caste system. Resources were entirely in the hands of the upper class, leaving those at the bottom virtually no chance for upward mobility. Henry and Zachary were prime examples. In my original world, they'd at most be playboy rich kids. Here, their actions were far more atrocious. I even suspect whether they have blood on their hands. And that organization Chloe mentioned, the Core, a faction capable of cross-national massacres? I couldn't imagine it. Drowsiness hit me. Before drifting off, I looked at the family portrait hanging on the wall. In the frame, the simply dressed woman gazed at me gently. Good night, Mom. Tuesday morning, the Crown Strategy Club. I checked the GPS on my phone and looked up. The entrance was grand, classic old money architecture. A golden name was carved into the marble plaque. 2 Roman stone pillars stood by the door. Whoa, pretty impressive. Silas, you're here. Lauren, wearing a white hoodie and a pleated skirt, waved at me from dozens of meters away. I was a bit exasperated. Didn't I say I could come by myself? If you didn't let me come, I'd just follow you secretly. She blinked triumphantly. I teased. Then why are you standing so far away? Scared? She put her hands on her hips, wanting to retort, but finally mumbled softly. Just a little bit, don't panic. I pulled out a folding fan from nowhere and snapped it open. Snap. Very soon, they will be the ones who should be afraid of us. I took out a graffiti spray paint can, aimed it at the expensive marble pillar and started spraying. Overrated. Useless. Total trash. Before I finished spraying, a young student in a uniform, Ben, rushed out of the club. What the FK? What are you doing? I raised an eyebrow. Isn't it obvious what we're doing? He looked at me, looked at Lauren, and then at the red words on the stone pillar. He abruptly turned his head and yelled toward the lobby. Someone is kicking the pavilion. The resident 7-dan player, Oliver, heard the report and smiled dismissively. How many years has it been since someone dared to challenge the club? Just get a student who's about to turn professional to go practice with them. Less than 5 minutes later, student Ben ran back in a panic. Our guy, lost. What? Oliver stood up abruptly. I'll go see for myself. He walked quickly to the advanced game room. I was sitting leisurely on the leather sofa twirling my folding fan. Ben, sitting opposite me, was deathly pale. Snap. The folding fan opened on cue. Oliver sized me up for a moment, then said deeply, I am 7-dan player Oliver. Apologize now, wipe the paint clean, and I can pretend you were never here. No need for that. I remember the challenge rules state that the club can choose 10 people to play against me, and if I lose one game, I fail. That game just now counts as the first one, right? Oliver frowned slightly. Do you know what failing a challenge means? I do. Then why are you still here? To collect a debt. Your director's son Henry owes me a gambling debt and won't pay, so I can only come to you guys to collect. Oliver hesitated for a moment, waved Ben away, and sat opposite me. The second game, I will play with you. Coin toss Nijirai. He took several stones from the bowl and held them in his palm. Odd, I said. He opened his hand for stones. Wrong again. He took black and played first, placing his stone in the center of the board. Tengen. I didn't hesitate, dropping a white stone right next to Tengen. Back and forth, over a dozen moves passed in the blink of an eye. Julian and Lauren's best friend Sophie also arrived at the game room. Seeing the person sitting across from me, Julian frowned. Why is it Oliver? Sophie whispered. Is he very strong? A 7-dan master. By now, nearly 30 stones were on the board. On the surface, Oliver had dictated the offense the entire time, and I could only defend passively. But Oliver's expression grew increasingly solemn. He realized something was wrong. He only had one live 2 left. Every other path had been completely blocked off by me. Meanwhile, my layout contained countless live 2s and open 3s, yet I showed absolutely no intention of attacking, merely defending blindly. Smack! I placed another stone, sealing his final open 4. Then, I began using the most conspicuous stones on the edges to build an offensive. It was practically telling him, I'm attacking here, come block me quickly. Oliver was sweating on his forehead. He had only felt this kind of sensation when he was young, playing against the current world #1 chess Saint Master Victor. But I was just a teenager. In the blink of an eye, dozens more stones were played. Under my subtle guidance, Oliver sealed off all the paths on one side of my white stones. His hand holding a stone suddenly hung in midair. Your name is Silas, right? I take back what I said earlier. You are very strong. Yeah, I know. With your skill, beating me shouldn't take more than 10 moves. The surroundings erupted into murmurs. Oliver tapped the table, suppressing the noise, and looked at me seriously. Please use your full strength. I want to see the gap between us. I smiled and shook my head. I placed a stone. This stone landed on the other side, outside the main battleground, seemingly completely unrelated to any existing lines. But Oliver instantly froze. At an incredibly tricky angle, this stone linked together 2 hidden connected 2s that had been blocked at one end long ago. 4 useless stones connected into 5. This move, you set this up 10 moves ago. Oliver's voice was dry. You could have won long ago. Yes, I lost. After Oliver surrendered, the club sent out an 8-dan player who also lost 10 minutes later. Following that, other resident players stepped up and were entirely defeated. The boss behind the club, Mr. Sterling, hurriedly flew back from out of town on a private jet and made a phone call inviting honorary Master Arthur to come out of retirement. At this time, an old but robust voice suddenly echoed from deep within the club. I heard someone is challenging the pavilion. I looked back. 2 old men in bespoke suits walked out. Julian's face changed on the spot. Chess Saint Victor? Why is he here? Chess Saint, the global #1? Victor walked up to me, sizing me up. You're the kid who beat 5-8 Dawn in a row yesterday? I snapped my fan open. That's me. Today's game, I'll play you. Fine. He didn't believe I wasn't afraid of him, but I genuinely wasn't. Just a 5-in-a-row player, what was there to fear? But Lauren panicked. She stepped forward and said Victor wasn't a member of the club, so it was against the rules. Victor turned to look at Mr. Sterling. I'll be a player for your club for one day. How about that? Sterling almost dropped to his knees. It is our utmost honor. Lauren wanted to say something else, but I snapped my fan shut. Since they were bringing in outside help, I wouldn't hold back either. Mr. Sterling, if you want the Chess Saint to play me, you have to add more money. I want half of the Sterling family's assets. Wall Street stocks, hedge funds, real estate, this club, I want half of it all. Furthermore, your son Henry must pay the price. Sterling didn't even blink. Deal. He simply didn't believe I could win. The board was set. Coin toss, I took black. I played Tengen. Victor defended diagonally. I didn't play randomly like before. I directly used the Puyue opening, the invincible opening, the universally recognized guaranteed win opening for black in my original world. Victor's skill was indeed strong, much stronger than those 8 Dawn from before. But that was all. He looked at my moves the same way a middle schooler looks at a university professor solving differential equations, able to see the steps, but not knowing why they were written that way. 21st move, I made a live 3. He blocked. Jumped for, he cut it off. Opened for, he blocked again. He thought he was defending, but in reality, every move was helping pave my way. 37th move, I placed a stone. 4-3 fork. Instant kill. Victor sat frozen at the board, unmoving for a long time. Beside him, Master Arthur asked how much strength he had used. He replied, 100%, and he lost with total conviction. The whole room exploded. A 17-year-old beat the Chess Saint. Jesus Christ, what kind of monster is this? Sophie and Lauren hugged each other, jumping up and down. Only Sterling stood in the corner, looking as if his father had just died. But he was a crafty old capitalist fox. His expression flipped, and he walked towards me with a face full of smiles. Boss Silas, I was taken aback. He'll have the asset transfers and equity handover done in the next couple of days, and he'll transfer half of last year's profits to you as well. The club will continue to operate, and all of this year's profits will belong to you. I understood. He wanted to tie me down. A 17-year-old boy who could beat the Chess Saint was worth far more than half the Sterling family. Fine. I needed the support of a powerful family. Sterling, you arranged these things. But about Henry, understood. When Henry was dragged up by the bodyguards, his face was pale. Seeing me sitting there, he lost his mind on the spot. "You slum trash. Why did you win? Why couldn't you just stay obediently at the bottom?" He lunged forward to strangle me but was fiercely pinned to the ground by the bodyguards. I crouched down, looking at his twisted face, and shook my head. "So ugly, Henry." I turned and left. From behind came Sterling's voice. "Throw Henry on the plane and send him to the Alaskan ice wilderness tomorrow." He thought he was being sent abroad for a vacation, but I knew that place was a true no man's land, a death zone. That night, I was curled up on the sofa when my phone rang. My middle school best friend, Marcus. "Come out for a beer, I feel awful." At a corner bar, our cold beers clinked. He took a massive gulp. "My college spot is gone. Lost to Capital." I almost laughed. It was just a community college admission spot, and he was making it sound like a national tragedy. But his expression was very serious. My academic points were definitely enough, but the guaranteed spot was stolen by capitalists and given to a brain-dead rich kid. My smile froze. In this world, even a spot at a community college was worth capitalists pulling strings. Due to limited intelligence, most people were weeded out in elementary school. High schoolers were already considered highly educated. Those who could get into college were 1 in 100. I said, "He'll figure out a way to help you." 2 days later, Twitter trending topics exploded. Humanity's #1 chess saint, Victor, played against Google's super AI, AlphaGo, and lost all 3 games. Pessimistic banners crying 5 in a row is dead flooded the internet. But Victor said one sentence at the press conference: "I am not the strongest. I will invite the strongest player I have ever seen in my life to fight for humanity once again." The entire internet was frantically guessing who this mysterious player was. My phone rang. It was Master Arthur. "Silas, I'd like to ask you to step up and play against the AI." I hesitated. The AI's computational power has no weaknesses. Me going would just be a waste of time. "Victor tried your strategy in the last game and the AI showed a flaw. Only you can win." I still wanted to decline. He stayed silent for a long time, his voice hoarse. "That AI has no soul. If it wins, future players will only copy it. Playing without a soul, what's the difference between that and being dead?" Just as I was about to speak, he suddenly added, "If you win, the prize money is 200 million euros. Euros? Euros. All right. For the dignity of humanity. For the international chess world. I, Silas, am duty-bound." 2 days later, the entrance to the Global Mind Sports Federation was packed with people. I squeezed through the crowd and took out my pass. The security guard's eyes widened. "You are that unparalleled in history mysterious player?" "That's me." The CNN reporters at the door were still arguing about who the mysterious player was, completely unaware that I had already gone inside. In the match room, the people from Google's AI team froze when they saw me. The director looked at Chess St. Victor. "This hope of all humanity you mentioned, is this high schooler in a hoodie?" As the live broadcast footage went out, the internet exploded. "The mysterious player is a high schooler. Is Master Victor joking?" I sat down opposite the terminal of the Super AI AlphaGo. Coin toss. The referee opened his palm 3 stones. I took black, playing first, 10 gen. This time, the AI didn't give me the chance to use the Puyue opening and directly pressed closely on the defense. But who said I only knew one opening? Polar Star opening. By the 20th move, I had cut off 70% of the AI's lines, and its win rate curve on the screen began to plummet. 27th move, 4-3 form. Game 1, I won. Victor was so excited he crushed the mineral water bottle in his hand, splashing Master Arthur beside him. The AI team director's face turned green. He hurriedly requested a halftime break, saying the server's liquid cooling equipment overheated and needed to cool down. I knew they were going to analyze my moves, but it was useless. Playing black first, whatever opening I used in this world was a guaranteed win. Half an hour later, the second game. Coin toss. 2 stones. I took white. It was over. White had no guaranteed win opening and was completely passive. The AI opened with 10 gen and directly copied my Polar Star opening. Learns pretty fast. I struggled for dozens of moves, but ultimately lost. A 1:1 tie. The third game decided the winner. It also decided the dignity of humanity and the ownership of 200 million euros. Coin toss. 2 stones. White again. The AI took black. A cloud of despair loomed over the hearts of all the spectators. I sighed. Whatever, at least I won one game, proving that humanity wasn't without a chance. Too bad about those 200 million euros. I casually placed a stone, preparing to play this final game as a relaxed match. The AI opened with 10 gen and I defended. The AI pressed closely against the white stone Polar Star opening again. Sure enough, it learns fast. Wait, my fingers suddenly paused. All of the AI's computational power was based on the logic of shapes. It analyzed effective stones that could participate in offense or defense. So what if I played a useless move? A completely superfluous stone that didn't participate in any offense or defense. The AI's database would absolutely have no logic algorithm for dealing with useless moves, because normal, highly intelligent humans would never play that way. But the competition rules didn't say I couldn't play like that. The corners of my mouth slowly curled up. Since playing normally couldn't win, I play sway abnormally. I picked up a white stone, a smile curving my lips. I placed it diagonally from Tengen, forming a strange knight's move Ricoractor shape with another white stone. Below the stage, Victor furrowed his brows tightly, completely unable to understand this useless move. The AI also paused for a few seconds before continuing to play its offensive moves. I placed another stone, ignoring its live 3, and formed an even longer knight's move right next to it. Everyone thought I had given up on myself. It wasn't until the 48th move that Victor's eyes suddenly lit up. My god, look at the gaps between his white stones. The spaces between every white stone are strictly locked within an absolute distance of 4 grid squares. Correct. As long as the black stones were within the coverage area of my white stones, they could connect 4 at most and never form 5. This was the gridlock matrixin 8 trigrams array from my original world used against beginners, specifically designed to confuse AI. The AI only calculated connecting and blocking stones, completely unaware that the territory of the entire board had been geometrically locked down by me. I walked AlphaGo like I was walking a dog in a maze. 60th move, I connected 2 live 3s. Victory. The arena exploded. The new chess saint. No, this is the god of chess. A 17-year-old overturned the sum total of 3 million years of human chess wisdom. I received my award, took photos, and the 200 million euro check was in my hands. Just as I walked out of the building, a heavy Ford truck rushed over like a mad beast. Bang. I dodged backward purely on instinct, my left arm heavily scraped, my head slamming hard onto the concrete. Master Arthur didn't dodge in time. Several reporters nearby instantly stopped breathing. I was shielded tightly by a group of men in black suits and taken away. We didn't go to the hospital. Instead, I was shoved into an armored vehicle and brought to an underground air raid shelter base. When I woke up, a man wearing a tactical vest who introduced himself as Agent Carter was standing by my hospital bed. This is the UNG United Nations Genius Council, dedicated to protecting rare geniuses like yourself. Just because I played a few games of chess? I clutched my forehead. More than that, your solution to the Newton paradox has been verified by Princeton University's academic committee. You are currently the only confirmed true genius among the 8 billion people on the planet. He showed me a top-secret file that read Silas is confirmed dead. Why did you announce my death? This is a UNG regulation. Every rule in the guidebook was built on the lives of our predecessors, Carter said deeply. I didn't ask further. The military was having a meeting next door discussing the car crash. I pushed the door open and walked right in. A room full of officers with stars on their shoulders stood up in unison, looking at me like a god. The Supreme Commander, General Collins, a 3-star lieutenant general, was extremely respectful to me. They had investigated for 3 days, and the clues led to Zachary. But 10 minutes after the incident, they intercepted an encrypted signal from a mysterious organization called the Domain. My brain worked quickly, and I asked, did you check the fingerprints on the truck keys? They hadn't. I told them to go to my house, get Julian's business card, and compare the fingerprints on it. An hour later, it was confirmed. It was Julian, that rich kid from the private academy who had always pretended to be a refined gentleman. Initiate arrest immediately. He may have accomplices, General Collins ordered. But agents reported that Julian was not in his luxury apartment. I smiled. Then he'll just ask him directly. I made a phone call. Julian, let's chat. He stayed silent for a long time on the other end, his voice stiffly feigning surprise. I was too lazy to waste words with him. Stop pretending. You have too many flaws. You think I called just to catch up? Modern communication signals can be tracked in real time by military satellites. I hung up. 3 Apache helicopters had already surrounded the building he was in. I stood on the rooftop, the gale whipped up by the rotors blowing my clothes wildly. Having the feeling of an entire nation's war machine standing behind me was truly f***ing satisfying. Bang. The rooftop door was kicked open. Julian walked out with his hands raised, his bespoke suit covered in blood. Dealt with an accomplice, afraid he would talk too much after being caught. We sat opposite each other on the rooftop like old friends chatting. He tossed me a can of Coke. I didn't catch it. Silas, there is a bug in this world. My gaze sharpened. What was he saying? He watched my reaction and smiled. As expected, you can understand. He said this was an encrypted annotation left in the margins of a tech history book by Dr. Elias Vance. Dr. Vance was the creator of the core. In the eyes of you true geniuses, the world is different. I didn't reply. He took a gulp of Coke, stood up, and walked to the edge of the rooftop. Leaving, I asked, I can't send my colleague on his way first and then be too afraid to follow. When you get to hell, remember to apologize to the people you killed. There's nothing to apologize for. I walked the path that the Domain believes is absolutely correct. He leaned backward, disappearing over the edge of the roof like a kite with a snapped string. A dull thud echoed from the ground below. I stood in place for a moment, then turned towards the helicopter. Agent Carter said in my earpiece that as long as I was alive, the Domain would enter silent dormancy, only coming out again after I died. What about other assassination organizations targeting geniuses? 5,000 years ago, the Domain slaughtered every single organization that dared to threaten geniuses. That's pretty Yandra. Carter suggested I completely change my identity. If you continue using the identity of Silas, it will cause interference or even life-threatening danger to your friends and family. I thought for for a moment and agreed. A day later, Boston's highest grade funeral parlor. I stood in the corner, wearing sunglasses and a black mask, looking at my portrait right in the center of the hall. The photo was cropped from my St. Jude High School student ID. I was completely f***ing numb, attending my own memorial service. Who could understand this experience? The attendees were all big shots from various fields. The chairman of the Global Mind Sports Federation, the governor, the head of the AI team. That director's face was ashen. He said AlphaGo had also died because its logic core had collapsed, and it would never have a chance to win it back. Lauren stood at the door wearing a black dress, her eyes rimmed red. Sophie stayed by her side. My best bro Marcus sat in the corner, his face bright red, clearly having been drinking, clutching a bouquet of white chrysanthemums, absolutely refusing to let go. I raised my phone and used an encrypted number to send each of them a text message. Stop crying, Daddy isn't dead. Lauren looked down at her phone, her eyes widening abruptly, then suppressed the corners of her lips, pulled Sophie, and left in a huff. Marcus froze for a long time, the corners of his mouth breaking into a grin. He pulled out a notebook and started scribbling furiously. 10 minutes later, the friends and family speech segment. Marcus walked onto the stage, his expression extremely sorrowful. I was Silas' middle school classmate, and we had a great relationship. So that everyone remembers the real him, I'd like to share some funny stories about him. My eyelids twitched wildly. I'm doomed. He once stood shirtless in the dorm in the middle of the night, singing Miley's Wrecking Ball at the top of his lungs, used binoculars to peep at the cheerleaders' locker room, used firecrackers to blow up a septic tank on the street, and got feces all over himself. The veins on my forehead bulged. That son of a bitch Marcus. The identity of Silas was officially unusable social death. The memorial service footage played on loop on news channels for 2 days. I had Carter use his authority to take it down completely from the internet. 2 months later, the digital footprint was thoroughly wiped clean, and the public's memory of my face blurred. I put on black-rimmed glasses and took on a new identity, Evan. Harvard University freshman. 3 months later, I boarded an Amtrak long-distance train crossing the East Coast towards Cambridge. The economy car was packed with blue-collar workers, reeking of cheap perfume and sweat. In the corner crouched a woman holding a baby. I walked over. Ma'am, why are you crouching while holding a child? Didn't you buy a seated ticket? She said timidly that she had. Number 27. I followed her gaze. A woman in her 50s, wearing a Chanel suit and looking wealthy, was hogging that seat. Beside her sat her son in a sharp business suit. Madam, you're sitting in this lattice seat, I reminded her politely. The woman's eyes widened, looking at me like an alien. You want me to get up and give my seat to a bottom feeder like her? Yes. Have some shame, this is her ticket. Get up. The train car fell dead silent. Her son sized me up, realizing I wasn't an ordinary blue-collar worker. His tone was relatively calm, but seeped with arrogance. Friend, we're rushing to a VC venture capital meeting in Boston, dealing with millions by the minute. Isn't it only right for these bottom feeders to give up their seats for us? None of the workers in the carriage spoke up. In this downgraded world, they had been accustomed for generations to being trampled underfoot by capital and the high IQ class. The woman suddenly locked onto the file folder on the side of my backpack, which bore Harvard's crimson crest. You're a student at Harvard? Yes, what about it? What's your name? Evan. She let out a short, cold laugh, acting extremely arrogant as she picked up the latest iPhone. Hello? Dean Hastings of Harvard Business School? Yes, this is Mrs. Claire. Your school has a freshman named Evan. His conduct is questionable to say the least. Yes, find an excuse and expel him. She put down the phone, her chin slightly raised, like an aloof queen. In 10 minutes, an expulsion notice will be sent to your phone. This is the price of being a busybody. A collective sigh of regret swept through the carriage. I looked at her and suddenly smiled. I raised my hand, my fingertips tapping twice against the microcommunicator in my ear, connecting to the highest authority channel of the UNG headquarters, and softly spoke a single sentence. The woman holding the baby was terrified. She rushed over to apologize to them on my behalf, begging them to be merciful and not destroy my future. I gently held her back. It's fine, ma'am. There's nothing to worry about with this kind of trash. A few minutes later, the woman's iPhone rang. She answered it triumphantly, even deliberately putting it on speakerphone. From the other end of the line, Dean Hastings, trembling, terrified, and even furious roar echoed through the entire carriage. Claire, the person you offended is someone not even the Pentagon dares to mess with. Your son's $60 million investment project has been completely frozen and terminated. Your entire family can just wait to die. The color drained entirely from the woman's face in an instant. She gripped her phone, trembling like a leaf, staring dead at me. I shoved my hands into my pockets, leaned against the side of the carriage, and gave her an extremely brilliant smile.